Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
What's up, everybody? A pleasant good morning, dissidents. Welcome to this Friday morning edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
Hola, amigos y amigas.
Great to see you all bright and early, 171 strong in the YouTube chat. Crowd filing in over on Rumble. Thank you guys all so much for being here. It is Friday morning, 9 a.m. Not many YouTubers watching YouTube videos in these parts this time of day, so please hit that like button. We got to juice that algo just like you juice an orange in the morning. We got to just squeeze everything we can out of it, so please hit that like button. And thank you guys all very much for being here. We got a good show for you planned today. Lots of topics to cover, lots of headlines to catch up on. We had an interview show on Wednesday, so we're a little behind on our headlines, but I want to thank Thomas Frank for joining us once again. I thought that interview went quite well. That was a lot of fun.
We got the Cornell endorsement, and
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
we sent that press release to CNN.
Yes, they should be running with that in about an hour.
Yeah, and that was definitely what he said, what he meant, and we're sticking to that story.
Right, we're gonna stick with that.
He said he feels obligated to vote for a friend.
Exactly. That's his friend. That's his friend.
That's an endorsement.
Right. Exactly. That's Thomas Frank issues statement. Cornell is my acquaintance, so I feel obligated to vote for him. Beautiful.
We'll take it how we can get it.
Take it how we can get it, indeed. So, folks, we have a great show for you. Like we said, we are now doing 3 streams per week. Once again, just want to make a quick program note. Once again, at the top of the show, we will be in New York City. Well, Russell is always in New York City, but I will be in New York City with Russell on Sunday, August 6th at the Humanity for Peace rally at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza on 47th Street and 2nd Avenue overlooking the United Nations. Our friend Jose Vega will be there. We'll be there filming pieces of that rally for our upcoming documentary film. And so there will be no show Sunday night. We will be doing a show Monday night, the day after, which just so happens to be Russell Dobular's birthday. So we'll have a nice special birthday stream on Monday. Did we do a birthday stream? I think we streamed on your birthday last year, too.
Did we?
I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were like, I might not make it back in time because I'm at Coney Island. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, this year we're going to, I always go to Coney Island. And then finally, I forget the name of the place. There's an Italian restaurant there that's over 100 years old that I always mean to go to. But I used to usually go to the 2nd Avenue Deli on my birthday. Not so much anymore. So I think it's like Gagliano's, some shit like that.
All right.
But we're going to go.
Well, you'll have Liat with you this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Excellent. Well, that should be a great day. That should be a lot of fun. We have a lot to get to today, folks, and being that it is a weekday during the day, my wife has a doctor's appointment at noon, so we do kind of have a bit of a hard out at around 11:30. So let's jump right in here, folks. So in June, California Governor Gavin Newsom sat down with Sean Hannity, who asked if he'd be willing to debate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Hannity's show. Newsom said, yes, let's do it, but DeSantis wouldn't really commit until Wednesday when he was asked about it on Sean Hannity's program. So here is Ron DeSantis committing to a debate with Gavin Newsom. We'll call this the parallel universe debate, in which these two are the respective nominees of the parties.
They very well might be.
Let's see.
Gavin, make the offer. Your answer is?
Absolutely. I'm game. Let's get it done. Just tell me when and where. We'll do it. And here's the thing, Sean. I mean, in one respect, the debate between California and Florida, has already been had, as you suggest. People have been voting on that. They've been voting on it with their feet. They have fled California in record numbers. Florida has been the #1 state for net in-migration. We have the #1 ranked economy, #1 now in education, crime rate at a 50-year low. But in another sense, this is the debate for the future of our country, because you have people like Joe Biden. They would love to see the Californication of the United States. Biden may not even be the nominee. You could have Gavin Newsom. You could have Kamala Harris. And I think if we go down that direction, that's going to accelerate American decline. We can't see America decline anymore. We need to reverse American decline.
All right, so it's on. This is sort of an audition for both of these guys. Newsom is auditioning for perhaps being the bullpen pitcher that they pull in halfway through the game if the Democrats do want to make a switch at the last minute and put him in. And DeSantis obviously gets to audition in front of Republican primary voters to see what a general election debate would look like. At this point, I think it's a pretty good move for both of them. Obviously, if you're a Democrat, auditioning means auditioning for the party bosses and the donors. Unfortunately for DeSantis, the Republican Party has this sort of obstacle in their way when it comes to nominating people called voters. And so he actually has to win over massive numbers of voters. But at this point, he's got not much to lose by doing this, since his polling is pretty much stuck in the low teens. And it looks like Donald Trump is not going to be part of that August debate. He sent a tweet out on Truth Social about a week ago saying, let them debate. I'll be watching to perhaps pick my VP, right? So if he doesn't get a moment against Trump on the debate stage, this is kind of the next best thing for him. And so it looks like we're going to have this debate in November, which is also conveniently timed because it's a little closer to the primary calendar. It's a little closer to the point which the Democrats might make a switch if they feel they have to. And also it gives time for the Republican field to shake up a little bit, not saying it will, but the closer this debate is to the start of the primary, I think the more potential benefit there is for each of them.
They're going to do this in November. They're going to hold it all the way to November.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I keep saying. DeSantis, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. His appeal is being underestimated. Gavin Newsom, it's funny. I see a lot of people really overestimate Gavin Newsom. You could very well end up with an election that is Gavin Newsom versus Ron DeSantis. California, that's basically like if the mayor of Portland ran for president. Like, you could not line it up better for the GOP than to run the fucking governor of California.
I think he could run it up a little better. I think he could run Joe Biden. I think that's a little better for the GOP.
Running Joe Biden is better. Next best thing, run the man responsible for California. They are conservative media is just full of horror stories about LA and San Francisco. It's second only to horror stories about Portland and Seattle. You run Gavin Newsom, and how is he going to defend his governance of the state, particularly when you have the Mitt Romney element of his state is falling apart, and he's at the French Laundry, right? At a time when everybody else is in lockdown. He's a very easy guy to give the Mitt Romney treatment to. And on top of that, unlike Mitt Romney, you have the limousine liberal element, which Americans, not just conservative, Americans hate. You know, remember, most people are not liberals. Most people are not Democrats. Most people are not conservatives, right? Most people are people. But that kind of signaling, that kind of a public image is really repulsive. And, you know, we've already gotten a preview of the line that Ron DeSantis would use against him. I think this is part of what prompted the challenge to debate, where he said, you've got this state with all of these natural advantages, scenic business, all of these advantages, and look at the state of it under Gavin Newsom. Now, to be fair, there were trends that predated Gavin Newsom's governorship. But the basic conservative argument, if you give liberals power, this is what you get. California is like the poster child for that. And I think he would have a very difficult time going up there and making a positive case for his tenure that by association would be a positive case for putting Democrats in charge of the government.
I mean, he could point to budget surpluses, and he could just point to executive experience in terms of running, what is it, the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world is the state of California. Their GDP is higher than most countries on earth. That's an argument you make if you are actually running for president, though. Like, if he's not on the ballot, that's not exactly an issues argument. That's an experience argument. That's a character argument, right? And so, you know, it'll be interesting to watch. I think that'll be fun TV for people in this space. Time will tell if it's anything more than that, but I think there's a reason they've both agreed to do it. And so we'll see how it goes.
For both of them, the upside is a lot more than the downside. Like, DeSantis has to do as much as he can to get people to look at him, to look at him and consider, like, hey, maybe we don't want to go with the guy who could literally have the desk from the Oval Office moved to Leavenworth for the term of his presidency. Maybe we could go with this successful executive from Florida who actually has a history of doing the things we say we want done.
Well, moving into segment 2 of the morning, polls between Biden and Trump are very close. The first New York Times Siena poll of the cycle had them tied at 43 apiece. Which is both a testament to the unpopularity of Joe Biden, but also a testament to the unpopularity of Donald Trump, because the Fitch rating for the United States currency was lowered for the first time ever last week from AAA to AA+. Now, this would spell very, very bad news for an incumbent president who wasn't running against someone like Donald Trump with such unbelievably high negatives. That's why I think this story kind of got lost, because under normal circumstances, this would be a devastating headline for a sitting president heading into a campaign. But now it's not, because both candidates have high negatives. But let's talk about this rating score change. So, Russell, you got some stuff, right?
Yes, I do. Okay, so this very quickly became a battle of narratives, as you would expect. Now, Fitch did mention January 6th as part of its explanation for why they did the downgrade. Of course, the Biden administration jumped all over that, but it was really the smaller part of their explanation. Their economic explanations, growing debt to GDP ratio, and also general political dysfunction. Predictably, the budget brinksmanship that goes on every time we have to settle on a new budget. Of course, that was going to erode our credit rating. So S&P actually did a similar downgrade back in 2011 after a debt ceiling standoff, and they never raised it back. Apparently, they kept it. So this puts them in line with S&P. And really, I mean, the stock market had like a bad day, but not a catastrophic day. It seems to have kind of taken it in stride. But we have a clip of the guy from Fitch on CNBC. So we'll take a look at that.
In 2007, general government debt was less than 60%, and now it's 113%. So there's been a clear deterioration. Furthermore, we're expecting fiscal deficits to rise over the next 3 years, and we expect debt to continue to rise over the next 3 years. And furthermore, because of the higher interest rates and the higher stock of debt, we're now seeing the interest burden rise pretty fast, actually, in the case of the United States. So the underlying numbers are, especially on the fiscal and debt side, are quite negative.
I know you referenced
Okay, so just to explain, to have a debt to GDP ratio, I think it's something like 117%. He said that is extremely high. So for those who are proponents of modern monetary theory, we're kind of testing that theory. We're testing the outer limits of that theory by running that kind of debt because we're basically money printing our way out of it. So Fitch, what he's saying here is they're betting on this deficit continuing to grow, and he is betting on that affecting our credit worthiness and consequently the rates of interest that America is going to pay on its debt. Now, I can tell you right now, 4-week Treasury bills are trading at about 5.3%. You get about 5.3% interest on 4-week Treasury bills right now. The historical average is somewhere around 1.2. So now this is the Fed increasing interest rates. That's plus the rate of inflation. That's the underlying reason behind that. But they're predicting from where we are now of a rising interest rate environment. And that is going to make any kind of debt extremely expensive, from home mortgages to your credit cards and so on, just to explain.
January 6th as part of this call. Why not do this a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like the debt and the fiscal burden, we've seen a pretty steady deterioration in governance over the last couple of decades. And I think that you can highlight a few key elements. One would be the January 6th, but secondly, I think importantly for us is the constant brinkmanship surrounding the debt ceiling debate. The fact that the government, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, haven't been able to come up with kind of meaningful long-term solutions to deal with growing fiscal issues, especially around entitlement programs, Social Security and Medicare. I mean, I think these are the type of things that highlight the importance of governments and also the inability of the government and both parties to come up with some kind of solution.
Okay, so as you can see, can you take that down, Kate? I'm going to share the screen.
Sure.
All right, so as you can see, even the interviewer wanted to direct it to January 6th, and he was like, yeah, there's January 6th, but there are a lot of other reasons as well that are actually more germane to why we did this.
January 6th was 2.5 years ago. So they had 2.5 years to take action based on January 6th, if that was the principle. I mean, it's
well, actually, Keaton, you might get yourself a job in the press shop over at the Biden administration, because that was kind of what they said. Actually, you're on the same page with the Biden administration.
Well,
never thought I would see the day. All right, so I just want to point out how CNN, the angle of this article is. Inside, how Biden's frustrated advisors crafted an aggressive response to Fitch's downgrade of U.S. credit, and the whole thing kind of continues in that vein of, without coming out and saying that this was a terrible thing they did to the poor Biden administration. The whole thing kind of has that tone. So apparently, they did get together and, come up with a response. So they called it the Trump downgrade, predictably. The Trump downgrade.
The Trump downgrade.
Of course. The fierce pushback showed just how seriously Biden's orbit is taking its effort to shift voter perception on his handling of the economy. The quick and aggressive response Tuesday to the downgrade, which at least one top administration official described as puzzling and flawed, is just the latest example of the challenges Biden faces over economic messaging. They're trying to do what Obama did with the Affordable Care Act and lean into Obamacare. Obamacare was meant to be a slam on it, and they decided to own it. They're trying to do that with this economy by calling it Bidenomics, which, has to be one of the dumbest marketing decisions in the history of advertising. Fitch's decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States. I believe this was Janet Yellen. Despite the gridlock, we have seen both parties come together. Yeah, it was Janet Yellen. To pass legislation to resolve the debt limit, as well as to make historic investments in our infrastructure and American competitiveness. And then Jean-Pierre, of course, took the political angle. It's clear that extremism by Republican officials, from cheerleading default to undermining governance and democracy to seeking to extend deficit-busting tax giveaways for the wealthy and corporations, is a continued threat to our economy. Okay, so as you could probably see from the fact that the man who told Thomas Frank he wanted to burn down the United States, even Keaton is in line with the Biden administration's take on this. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. I mean, sure. Is it the Democrats that every debt ceiling decides they're gonna do this game of we're not paying the national debt? No, it is the Republicans. It is the Republicans who have caused the impression that the United States at this point is too unstable and too irresponsible to pay its debts. Whatever issues we collectively might have with the policies of the Democratic Party, they don't care about that over at Fitch, right? If you look at what he's saying at the end of that video, Fitch would probably upgrade an austerity program. Because what's he saying? Oh, they can't work. They can't work out differences on Medicare and entitlement. That's code for we would love it if you guys just got rid of entitlements, right? Like it's not that. It's that there's this inability to actually do anything that disturbs them. If we actually, as a nation, did horrible things to get rid of entitlements, Fitch would create a new rating above AAA for the United States. It's not about that. It's about the clear level of dysfunction that the government has. And in that sense, what the White House's response is, who's more responsible for giving the impression that we literally can't govern ourselves? Sure, it's the Republicans. Sure, they are to blame. It's not January 6th. And he said that. And they brought that on themselves by even mentioning it in their research note on why they did this. Of course, everybody honed right in on that element, but he made it pretty clear. Yeah, that's a part of it, but really it's that every time the debt ceiling comes up, you guys threaten not to pay.
It's an apocalyptic showdown.
Right. So that's why. So far, markets seem to be not taking it too seriously at the moment. Remember, part of that, people see what they want to see. There's a lot of cash that's been sitting on the sidelines waiting to come in, and there aren't a lot of places to put it. So the investor class is highly motivated to keep this year's stock market run going.
All righty, let's take a super chat or two. Super chats are super helpful. That's what makes these morning shows possible. So thank you guys very much. Our next segment is our RFK Max Blumenthal segment. I know we had Ellen who wanted to call in today to talk about the border. We can admit you for a few minutes after this segment. So get prepped over there. And when you're ready to be admitted, just unmute your microphone. Because that was sort of a forgotten piece of that segment. So we'll talk for a few minutes with Ellen about that, since she had emailed us and wanted to call in about that. So we're happy to hear from you, Ellen. That'll be coming up in a few minutes. Zach Boyles, thanks for the $4.99, my friend. Disappointed Greenwald didn't ask West why he supports forced medical apartheid for Palestinians and Americans and anyone else in the sights of the WHO. Well, I'm surprised RFK doesn't support medical apartheid for the Palestinians. I'm surprised he hasn't made an exception in their case. You'd think he might. But we're going to talk about RFK in just a moment. Pat Donahue. Go ahead, Russell. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robert. I didn't realize. I'm sorry. You look like Russell from this angle.
Usually I'm against camps, but we know that the virus was engineered so that Palestinians are particularly prone to spread it to the rest of us like vermin. I'm not comparing them to vermin, but vermin spread diseases. So in that sense, they are very much like vermin, but I don't mean what I just said. I don't actually mean, I'm not comparing them to vermin. I'm simply saying they spread disease like vermin.
Exactly. Pat Donahue, thanks for the $10. I see RFK dodged a debate with MB. I didn't see JD's debate with him. How did he perform on Israel himself against RFK? Well, we will talk about that in a moment. I did see one clip. He claimed Palestinian paid to kill Jews abroad. Crazy and shameful. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. Although I would refer everybody, and I'll mention this in the segment. I would refer you to an interview that Brianna Joy Gray did with someone, I forget his name, last night. It just dropped last night, where he did a very, very thorough point-by-point rebuke of a lot of the RFK points that he brought up in that Jimmy Dore interview. And I would definitely recommend that you check that out. So we'll have more on that in a moment, Patrick, but thank you very much. Dave DeLarai, thanks for the $12. Love that interview with Mr. Frank. Watched it 3 times because I've never seen him have that type of interaction. Nicely done, man. Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it.
I think it's safe to say Katie has never broken off and screamed "fuck the country."
Fuck the country. He doesn't get that perspective too often, right?
No, he does not. No, he does not.
All right, folks. So I don't know if you recall, because it didn't get all that much attention in this space, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did appear on the Jimmy Dore show last week, where they talked about a variety of issues, including, of course, the Israel-Palestine issue. And during that back and forth, Jimmy felt like he should defer to Max Blumenthal to debate the finer points of this, since Jimmy felt like he was not equipped to counter a lot of what RFK was saying. So before we get into this, I will just give my overall take on that Dore RFK exchange. And I gave this on RBN earlier this week. Jimmy could have been stronger. There's no doubt about that. He knows that. That's why he apologized for not being prepped better during the actual interview and after the interview. However, I maintain that you cannot adequately prep for a debate with a liar, because there's an infinite number of lies that a liar can tell. You can only study what's true. You can't study what's not true. You can't study every lie that's about to come out of a maniac's mouth. And so Patrick Donahue just super chatted us a moment ago talking about how Palestinians will pay people to kill Jews anywhere in the world. That is a complete and utter distortion. Palestinian authorities will pay families of imprisoned Palestinians. So if you are imprisoned by the Israeli state, your family will get money. And what they have said is that they are not going to differentiate payments or non-payments based on what you are in jail for. Because if a kid throws a rock at an Israeli tank, they'll throw that kid in jail, and they want to give that family money. And so there have been cases where murderers have gotten money sent to their families while they are in prison. That's true. But that is completely different, completely and utterly different from what RFK implied. Or, I'm sorry, he didn't not imply it. He said it outright. They'll pay you to kill Jews, implying that there are these for-hire hitmen around the world getting rich off of murdering Jews that the Palestinians are paying. This is what I mean. The guy just is not truthful. He's not truthful. He makes lawyerly arguments. He traffics in obfuscations, half-truths. He takes little things. One of the other lies he told was that they'll name a street after you in Gaza if you kill a Jewish person. I scoured the internet looking for examples to corroborate that claim. I couldn't find anything until hours later I found one article in the Times of Israel, which is not exactly the most unbiased source. One instance of that happening 8 years ago. 8 years ago, where a kid, I think he was 19 years old, he killed 2 people and was shot by the cops, and they named the street after him. So but if you listen to RFK, he would have you believe that it's a point of policy, right? That you are honored publicly for doing all this every time. And this is what I mean. If you're Jimmy, I'm sorry, Russell, I'll cut you off. But if you're Jimmy, when you hear a thing like that that's so crazy, it's hard to counter in real time, because you're hearing this crazy thing for the first time. It sounds like it's completely batshit crazy and untrue. But if you say that's untrue and RFK points to, well, in 2015 they did this, then you look like a bit of an idiot, even though you're not, even though you are correct in that what he's saying is a gross overstatement. It's extremely dishonest framing. Lawyer that he is, though, he might have a factoid in his back pocket that he can use to embarrass you, and so you don't say anything, right? That's why it's very difficult to debate liars. And so that's how that debate unfolded. So that's my overall take on that. Russell, I don't know if you want to add something before we go to the Blumenthal thing.
Well, it is well known there is a facility in Jenin where they take Jews and they sew sausage casings onto their circumcised penises, basically to restore their foreskin, to un-Jew them, right? And I'm surprised he hasn't gotten into that.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm surprised he didn't write a book about that.
They buy your family a house if you restore the foreskin of a Jew with a sausage casing. This is the problem with RFK overall, and this is what we both came out the other side saying when we read his book. It's a mix of truth and lies. It's a mix of factoids and exaggerations, and he does a lot of lying by omission. That Larry Kramer thing is a perfect example, where he tells you that AIDS activist Larry Kramer called Fauci a murderer. What he doesn't tell you is that he later reconciled with Fauci and credited him with fast-tracking new AIDS treatments. Now, however you feel about Fauci, I'm not defending Fauci by bringing that up, but I'm pointing out he didn't tell you that part of the story. He didn't tell you that. If you read his book, you would come away from it thinking, oh, wow, this very credible AIDS activist called Fauci a murderer, so he must be a murderer, right? He doesn't tell. He constantly does that throughout his book. I brought this up a lot. Because this is when I realized who we're dealing with there. He talks a lot about theories about HIV and AIDS that were kind of fringe theories floating around in the late 80s into about the mid 90s that have been completely disproven. He makes it sound like this is currently debated, right? Like this is a point of debate now. And he does not tell you this is from 20, 30 years ago. Sure, there are notes. You have to go into the back. How many people do that? I did. And that's how I started taking it apart. I started going into the note. This guy's talking about articles in the Village Voice from freaking 1991. This is what this is based on. And he's not telling you the other side. He's not telling you the contrary evidence. It amazes me when you get people who say, you've got 100 doctors who believe this. Well, what about the 25,000 who don't? Like if you're relying on a lot of doctors believe it basis for your argument, well, then, okay. So what about they're all bought. It's not that, hey, anybody who watches this show on the regular knows how much I talk about the, medicalization of children regarding the trans issue. It's not that I don't think the medical industry is corrupt, but that doesn't mean that everything they say is evidence of corruption. When you take that posture, it makes you susceptible to con artists who are going to exploit your justified skepticism by feeding you things that sound somewhat plausible so you believe them. But, once you see what this guy is about, all the more so in a world where it's very difficult to figure out what the truth is, that's the last person you want to listen to, right? There are credible skeptics. He's not one of them.
So, about partway through the debate, I would say about halfway through the Israel section, Jimmy realized that, he wasn't equipped to counter a lot of what RFK was saying. And so he tried to, pass the ball to Max Blumenthal by asking Robert F. Kennedy Jr. if he would be open to debating Max on the issue or talking to Max on the issue. So here's how that went down.
Oh, but I do not think I love Max Blumenthal, but I do not think he's objective on Israel. I think his reporting on Israel is not it needs to be questioned.
Okay, well, here's what I would
that's
ask.
Like saying, first of all, that's bullshit. I love Max Blumenthal, but I don't like him on Israel. That's like saying I love the Beatles, but I hated the White Album. Like, what are you talking about? This is one of the things that Max Blumenthal has written most about. So how can you be a huge fan of Max Blumenthal but not think he's credible on Israel?
I mean, personally, I do like Max's cover of Love Me Do a lot more than his cover of I Am the Walrus.
Right, exactly. All right, here we go.
Like, Peter Hotez ducked.
It needs to be questioned.
Okay, well, here's what I would ask. Just like, Peter Hotez ducked you and Joe Rogan, I would love, because Max is the guy to talk to about this, not me. So would you do an interview with Max, because he would be able to talk to you about this way better than I can. I'm really not good at this.
Yeah, I would love to talk to Max.
I would love to talk to Max. Little tell there. This guy's not the best poker player. All right. Yeah, I'd love to talk to Max. Hey, Russell, ask me if I paid out your rightful balance of the podcast money last month.
Hey, Keaton, did you mess up the math last month on my payout?
Oh, no. It's all there.
Yeah. Why did I only get 75 cents and a handshake?
That's what it worked out to be.
Oh, all right. I don't usually work for handshakes, but okay.
Right, exactly. So, I'll tell you, I could have told you a mile away. In fact, I said it when we were on the Post-Duopoly show on Tuesday, that there's no way he's going to sit down for a debate with Max Blumenthal on this topic. There's just, I thought there's absolutely zero chance of that happening. And lo and behold, let's do a little screen share for you folks here. Max Blumenthal tweets out yesterday afternoon, a day after RFK agreed to Jimmy Dore's proposal to publicly discuss his pledge of unconditional support of Israel with me, his comms director was dialing me up to offer a series of unbelievable excuses for why this could not happen in the foreseeable future. The Gray Zone reports RFK Jr. staff block Israel-Palestine dialogue with the Gray Zone editor-in-chief after the candidate agreed. Kennedy's not debating Max Blumenthal, said RFK 2024 comms director Stephanie Spear. He's not going to debate anyone. He's running for president.
What? You don't fight in here, man. This is the war room.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy mentioned the whole Peter Hotez thing on the show, where RFK challenged Peter Hotez to a debate, and Peter Hotez said he didn't want to do it. And so now RFK, who challenged Peter Hotez to a debate, is now saying, as a point of policy, he's not willing to debate anyone. He's running for president. And I got to tell you, whether it's Jimmy Dore or Peter Hotez or Max Blumenthal, right? I'm not saying I have equal respect for all three of those people, but when you handle a discussion the way RFK handled that discussion with Jimmy Dore about Israel-Palestine and about the southern border for that matter, you give credibility to people like Hotez for saying, no, you're not worth debating for the same exact reason. Because how does Hotez know he's not going to bring some study that he pulls out of his ass or some weird sort of distortion of the truth that he's never heard before? And if you've never heard of something before, it's very, very difficult to counter that point. And so how do you know you're not going to look like you have egg on your face when you don't deserve to have egg on your face? I'm not saying that's how it would have went down, but when you see how he handles debates, when you see how he handles confrontations, where you see how quickly and with such charisma he can spew lies and half-truths, and that gives credibility to people who are saying, no, I'm not going to debate you because you're not an honest actor, and you're going to present a case in a way that makes it look like you're credible when you're not, and because you're so uncredible, it's going to make me look like an idiot because I'm just going to be sitting there flabbergasted at all this bullshit that you're throwing at me faster than I can process and spit back in your face.
And that is exactly what I've been saying. That is exactly why I've been telling people who rightly are very concerned about issues surrounding the virus of unknown origins. This is the last person you want on your team because he undermines the credibility of your cause. This is why I don't want this fucking maniac anywhere near what I consider the existential cause of free speech and open media. I don't want that connected to this fucking screwball. Because you're right. Look at what we were just saying about his book. If he had debated Hotez, he's going to be pulling out studies that Hotez is not aware of. Because they're studies from 1987. But he's not going to tell you that part. And then he's going to say later on, I can refer you right to the study that I was talking about. Yeah, the study exists, but there are 10 caveats about that study that he's not telling you, including that it's been thoroughly debunked. He's just going to tell you there is a study. It's a real study. Look, I referred you to the study. Now, with Israel, he can't pull that shit on Max because Max is the one who's encyclopedic about the history of this in a way that he is not. That's why he won't debate Max, but he would debate Hotez because he knows he can bullshit his way through a debate with Hotez. He can't with Max on this subject.
Exactly. Yes, that is 100% right. And so, yeah, there's not going to be a debate with Max Blumenthal. I knew that. I saw that coming a mile away. It'd be interesting to see how Jimmy handles that because, he was very proud of the fact that he got him to agree, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew it was not going to happen. You could tell. He's got to tell right there. He scratches it. When does RFK ever scratch his face when he talks? Never. Never. Right? He's a pro. He's a Kennedy. He's a celebrity. Right? And yeah, no, I'd love to debate Max. Bullshit. Bullshit, obviously. Not even a question.
Side note, it's very funny that whatever fucking brain trust is remaining over at the Marianne camp over there seems to think they have an opportunity to grab RFK's voters or people who are disaffected with his COVID position. Because you came out this week with almost a non sequitur in August 2023, a strong stance on bringing mask mandates to hospitals and air filtration systems to mass transit. Okay, the only people that's going to appeal to, Biden's got those people. Like
right,
exactly. The COVIDians, the extreme normie Democrats, some moron over there decided, there are probably a lot of people who don't want to vote for Biden who are, not comfortable with RFK's COVID stance. So why don't you come out with a strong stance on masking?
Well, you're fighting for 0.5%. You're fighting for, 1 in every 200 possible voters.
Just the pathetically stupid nature of both of these campaigns. And I also don't think it's an accident that Marianne's buddies over there in the PMC online left kind of pushed her this week. I think they were trying to do a renewed push for the campaign. So Bree had her on and absurdly tweeted out, "Oh, she's catching up to RFK." It's just fucking absurd. It's absurd. I'm honestly a little surprised because after the last person from our campaign came out and broke the NDA, I thought by now the PMC commentators would be scrambling to salvage the way they've damaged their reputation by backing our campaign, and that doesn't seem to be happening with RFK. It seems like what few commentators were behind him, like Max, from what I understand, had been supportive of him, are starting to run away from him. They're starting to realize what they're dealing with here. The Marianne stands, they're stuck on stupid. It doesn't seem like anything is she's gonna have to fucking lob a Nokia personally at these people before they're gonna stop trying to pump up this dead campaign.
All right, we got Ellen in here. Ellen, you wanted to talk a little bit about RFK. Ellen is a patron supporter, friend of the show, and caller. Your merch is on the way, Ellen. It should be getting there any day now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I would have had it on today had I had it.
I know. Too bad.
I know. I'd be drinking coffee the whole nine.
I know. You got the mug and the shirt on the way. Indeed. So, we've talked a lot about RFK's interactions with Jimmy Dore on Israel-Palestine, but he also talked a lot about the southern border during that interview, and you're, an expert on this topic. You might be, I don't know how humble you are in giving me a hard time about being an expert, but you are an expert on the topic. You made a documentary film. Okay, good.
No,
good
I'm not humble in that area.
Perfect. Beautiful. I was afraid you were going to give me pushback, and I was going to have to say, no, you are an expert.
I'll never give you pushback on being an expert.
All right, beautiful. All right, well, good deal.
I just need you to tell Al that sometime.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That you recognize the expertise of his wife.
There you go.
He actually did get a question the other day about immigration from a man who asked him for the advice. And I said, I'm sure you told him that you know nothing, but I know it all.
Right, you know it all, right?
But
so why don't you give your take on that? Because
I mean, it's exactly what you say. I'm hesitant to call anybody a liar and a maniac, but I am prepared to say that he's just batshit stupid. I don't know how you can be so stupid and stand up on your two good legs and talk about a real issue that's costing people their lives, their fortunes, their dignities, and not have done any research. So he says, I needed to figure out what's going on at the border. So I went to the border and I spent 3 whole days and I figured it out. Now I know what's going on. Here's and how does he know these things? By talking to the most perfect witnesses when it comes to the border patrol.
Border Patrol, right? Yeah.
Awesome. So this is actually what's happening at the border. And of course, my concern is that people are going to hear this, and as you say, they won't know enough to rebut it, and they'll think there's enough truth in it, that we need to do something based on. So the narrative is migrants are not coming from Mexico and Central America, according to Dr. Kennedy. They're not coming from Mexico. They're not coming from Central America. They're coming from Nepal, Afghanistan, Western Africa. And it's not that they're not coming, but it's not a wave of Nepalese coming and no Mexicans and no Central.
I didn't even see this. Is that what he said?
That's what he said.
From all over the world, basically. Yeah.
And you know why they're coming? Because the cartels are putting together videos and posting them on TikTok, and people in Nepal and Kazakhstan are watching those videos. And sure, it's going to be expensive, but you're going to have a big time. You're going to have a big time. It's going to be quite an adventure. We're going to get you here safe and safe. TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok.
Really?
Cartels. There's no such thing as a coyote. Just a mom and pop coyote with 3 guys. This guy gets you over the border. This guy gets you through Arizona. This guy gets you to, oh no. And so they go into debt and they become indentured servants to the cartels. And he also said that all you have to do when you cross a border is you tell an agent what city you want to go to, and they fly you there.
He said that?
Oh, he said every single thing. He said, and then they just disappear. Now, that's not right.
Well, I can see. Look, they're sending whatever you think of it. DeSantis is flying these migrants all over the country, so we're getting a lot of them in New York. They don't look Nepalese to me.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing: I keep up with border deaths. Since January to today, just in Arizona, there have been 66 migrants whose remains have been recovered. When they can identify them, they put their name. Each and every one of those names sounds to me more Hispanic than Kazakhstani.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, of course. I mean, look, it's just absolutely on its face insane.
Well, see, that's where with some of the stuff he says, I'm like, he's not just a liar. He's fucking batshit crazy, man. Like some of it strikes me as he's just
batshit crazy. Well, but the thing is, people will believe it because they do think in terms of cartels, fentanyl, and he mentions the rape tree, and it's a humanity, and he's got 7 kids, and there was one person who was separated from it. What do you think is going on down there? Seriously, what do you think?
Right. No,
and
I mean,
so Jimmy says, what would you do about it? And of course, he doesn't say anything but, well, we have to take into account hurricanes and other natural disasters. And, well, you could stop deposing other people's democratically elected presidents. You could stop passing free trade agreements. Those got, things like that. I mean, that was the most.
You could lift sanctions on Venezuela.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, but I think people will listen to that and it will feed right into, and of course, it's like, we've got to secure the border. And then he says these things like, Biden has said he won't use any of Trump's materials. So cameras that were put up by Trump have been taken down.
Yeah, I don't know how they would determine that. I don't know how they would know that or why they would do that. I mean, but first of all, Biden has continued I mean, you know this better than I do, Ellen. Biden has continued so many of Trump's border policies. So why would he not use the cameras that Trump put up? Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like I said,
also, as my friend Todd Miller says, Kennedy seemed to be pushing the idea that a surveillance system would be somehow a better, more humane system, and it just isn't. It isn't. So and it bothers me too, because we have a federal policy of funneling migrants to their deaths. That is our policy. At least 8,000 migrant remains have been recovered, and border watchers think it's probably 3 times that. It is a federal policy, meaning we have complete control over it.
Right.
Unlike Israel, Palestine.
Right. Exactly. Right. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for calling in with that, because that was a sort of underreported on segment of the interview, because obviously the Israel stuff got all the press. But thank you for catching that, and thank you so much for calling in. And call in when the shirt and the mug get there.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I will.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Great to talk to you as
Thank
always.
you, Ellen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bippin, who is a Patreon supporter, he's in the private chat in here in the studio. He has a question for Russell on this issue. He says, I saw some footage of migrants outside Roosevelt Hotel and another place, and they made it sound like it's all neighborhoods of the city. That's got to be bull. How's it actually on the ground?
New York is such a diverse place that you drop a lot of migrants into New York. It's not noticeable on the street,
right? Because it's a melting pot anyway. It's a melting pot,
right?
It's a lot of immigrants in New York always.
Yeah. We're not like up in a cheese making country in the wilds of Wisconsin here. Where you drop thousands of people from Latin America. It's oh my
you
God.
drop them in Vermont, the people are going to notice, right?
Right. I mean, so it's not noticeable. What I have seen here and there is people with signs that they're migrants begging on the street. Not often. I don't want to give that impression that we're full of migrants panhandling, but I've seen it. And you can see that they're not from here, like the way that they just handle themselves on the street. You can see that they're not from New York. So, I've seen that, but other than that, because it's New York City, you just wouldn't even notice it, really. I mean, if you take the subway, the 7 out to Flushing, where I'm from, you're very likely to be the only, if you are white, you're likely to be the only white person on the train.
Right.
That's New York. So how would you notice that?
Yeah, it's a very diverse place indeed. I had the same sense for that question. Eric Rousseau, thanks for the $2. Morning Joe or morning Dew? Well, that's not a tough question for our audience, I hope. But now in these morning shows, we are going back head to head, I should say, with the Morning Joe broadcast. You guys can support this show. You can support this show by going to patreon.com/DewDissidents. We had some new members sign up overnight. You are on the scroll. We also had some Substack subscribers sign up for the paid Substack. You are on the scroll as well if you gave us a name. if you sign up for Substack as a paid subscriber and you want to be on the scroll, you got to tell us your name because I don't want to publish your email address on the scroll, obviously. But thank you guys for doing that. It makes a huge difference. It is hugely helpful. It helps censor-proof this operation. We have been warned by YouTube, so on our next offense, the YouTube channel will be dark for a week. We hope that never comes, but it might. And so the best way to support this program is to go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and become a monthly supporter. You can also go to DoDissidents.substack.com and sign up as either a paid member or a free member. Please, at the very least, go to our Substack and sign up for the free list so that you can be notified when we go live. You also get audio podcasts versions of all of these streams sent to you through the Substack app, which works just like a regular podcast player. So there's all kinds of cool little hidden perks that you get when you join on Substack, even for free. And so please, please, if you can, make sure you do that. And, of course, Super Chats are super helpful as well. Please hit that like button on this stream, folks. That goes for YouTube and for Rumble. We got a nice little Rumble crowd in there, 82 strong. Please hit that like button over on Rumble. And please hit that like button in here so we get some more eyes on these morning shows. Helena Katik, I hope I said your name correctly. Russell, MMT is not about printing money. Do yourself and your audience a favor and actually learn about MMT before giving a half-assed opinion.
Listen. I have spoken to every person in my apartment building, and they all agree it's about printing money.
Well, we said we're going to read the Stephanie Kelton.
Yes. I mean, actually, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I've read articles on it. I've never deep dived into a book on it. That's actually a fair criticism. I'll tell you what. I will now that
fucking half-assed prick.
Yeah, you're right. I'm half-assing it. I've only spoken to the guy who makes my sandwiches at the bodega about it. But yes, I will read an entire book on it. I don't think it's going to change my mind, but hey, it could be wrong. Maybe it will.
All righty. Love DD Friday morning, says named my taco. Thanks for the $2. I look forward to it now. Well, thank you. We look forward to being here. I love these morning streams. These morning streams are a lot of fun. I dig them very much. It's a good way to start the day being here with all of you guys. Samuel Bruce, thanks for the $1.99. The RFK Jr. story hour is like that North Korean lady, like Naomi Park at the getting out and pushing the trades. That would be a good conversation. Those two.
RFK.
And Naomi Park going head to head. Now that would be a debate. I don't know what they'd be debating, but that would be
way better boobs than RFK. Yeah. Although, if you've seen RFK with his shirt off, it's pretty impressive.
Not bad.
I'll give him that. I'll give him that. I think he should run for fitness czar or something.
Yeah, fitness czar. Exactly. Yeah, that would be good.
I'd vote for him for that.
Yeah. Let's go to Jessica, member for 2 months. So it's your 2-month member birthday, Jessica. Thank you very much. Do you think RFK overcompensates for his father, Joe, being a Nazi sympathizer? And did Pelosi slip and call him Joe or a discreet threat? I didn't see the Pelosi thing.
I did not see that. I don't think that's what it is. Although I will say this: the dark side of the Kennedy family, under the myth, there's a personality style that runs through that family of being extremely arrogant and very. Having an inflated sense of their own opinions, right? I'm a Kennedy. I got this. Oh, experienced pilots don't want to take the plane up. I'll put my wife and sister-in-law on the plane. Fuck it. I'm a Kennedy. What's going to happen to me?
Yeah, no, I mean, these guys are ego monsters. They're right. Just giant ego monsters, a lot of these guys. And I think, Russell has spoken to this in the past, but RFK's Israel stance is, it's very much an old school, sort of stance on Israel. Like you used to hear that kind of rhetoric back, it
was
60s, 70s, 80s. That was it. That was the only opinion you could have on Israel back then. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from now. And, the thing that really made it sting is that a lot of people didn't even know that he felt that way on Israel-Palestine because he doesn't talk about it much, right? He talks more about medical stuff, and then he started the campaign, obviously talking more about Ukraine. When he came out and defended Roger Waters against charges of anti-Semitism, people thought it was a real, pick us up and drop us because people thought, oh, wow, he's actually based on Palestine. Wow.
Right.
What a breath of fresh air. And then literally hours later, oh, I didn't realize he supports Palestinian rights. In that case, I retract my support. You know, so it was like this real thing where like everybody got all excited and then super disappointed.
Yeah, and you can understand how some of his enemies are so repulsive, and I think this happens a lot, that there's this is the Donald Trump story to me. He's very fortunate in his enemies. His enemies, look, when they wanted to rehabilitate Hannibal Lecter, what did they do? They got Gary Oldman to play an even more repulsive being to make him the hero by comparison. This happens with a lot of guys. You put RFK next to Plaskett and Schultz, and he looks like a hero, right? I was looking at an article the other day that was talking about his long history of anti-Semitic statements, which, first of all, is off base. It's not that. I mean, this is where I say I think he's a little crazy that he's sitting there talking about. Yeah, it was engineered to avoid the Jews. Is it because he's anti-Semitic or because he's a fucking lunatic, right? Like, I don't really think it's that. But this article was saying, in its laundry list of his offenses against Jews, it says, I think it was Daily Beast, which of course, and he defended rocker Roger Waters, who wore a fascist coat at a concert in Germany. I mean, these people are just unbelievable, man. Like, if you're just completely ignorant of that and you're just going to take that at face value, you've been so misinformed after reading an article like that. I mean, that's disinformation.
Eric Cousseau, thank you for the $5. RFK is against masks because his lying would cause him to get a lot of schmuck. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate that.
Is he against masks? Was he against masks?
He was. That was part of the book too. Alrighty, folks. We will get to more super chats in just a little while, but let's get into segment number 4. So on Tuesday of this week, it was announced that Donald Trump would be indicted in an election interference probe. So we'll take a little peek at the charges. Here, count number 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count number 2, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Count number 3, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And count number 4, conspiracy against rights, in this case, voting rights, since they're arguing that he tried to nullify certain votes and therefore violate people's right to vote. Now, the most interesting thing about this is count number 3, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. That alone carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. And actually, Lee Fong, who we're looking to have on the show in a couple of weeks, we're just trying to nail down a date, he put out a really interesting Substack article talking about how that particular count sets a dangerous precedent because a lot of protests, especially left-wing protests, have to do with obstructing official proceedings. There were protests surrounding the Brett Kavanaugh hearing and swearing in where crowds gathered in front of the building, and that could be construed as an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. That was sort of an Enron-era law that was adopted to basically do what it says. However, that has never really been invoked in the way that it has been now for his role in January 6th. And so that could set a dangerous precedent. We'll probably do a full headline segment on that piece alone on Sunday, so we'll get more into that. But as you can see, these are the January 6th indictments, and he was arraigned yesterday in Washington, D.C. Now, we could do an entire show if we wanted to on reactions on both sides of the issue, both the libs and the MAGA chuds, to the indictment and the subsequent arraignment, which, like I said, happened yesterday. But since this is a morning show, we figured we would keep it light. We'd focus on the more absurd and the funnier reactions. And so first, here is Al Sharpton on MSNBC giving quite the historical perspective on this development.
I thought about this as I was looking through the indictment last night, and I grew up and started my activism in a section of Brooklyn called Brownsville. and walking to the subway many mornings, some of the guys in the neighborhood would say, Rev, I caught a case. I have never walked down that block and somebody said, I caught 3 cases. I mean, this is just as low as it gets. I've never heard of 3 cases on one individual in 3 jurisdictions. So this is serious. But on the other side of it,
here it comes.
One day our children's children will read American history. And can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at American history, and how it will play out is going to be very important.
Could you imagine reading history and finding out that James Madison and Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government to protect their power? Could you imagine reading that in a history book?
It's like suggesting that George Washington committed violence against the legal government of the country.
Could you imagine?
That's insane.
Finding that out. Could you imagine George Washington took up arms against the ruling authority and tried to overthrow them to enshrine his own power? Amazing. Now, look.
That really puts it in perspective.
Yeah, exactly. You have a 24-hour news network there. MSNBC is a rogues gallery of people who, as we all know, not all there when it comes to their takes on the day. And so, every once in a while, someone's going to say something that's just so obviously absurd. That comes with the territory, right? That's part of the game. That's part of running a 24-hour TV network.
Well, to avoid that, we built our entire show around just doing that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But MSNBC was not so quick to move past that, right? You figure if you're MSNBC, you figure, all right, that was a stupid thing to say. Whatever it happens, we'll just move on. No. MSNBC, the network, was actually very, very proud of that quote. They actually tweeted out that clip that I saw. That wasn't a clip that was lifted from someone trying to troll them. That was actually taken from the MSNBC Twitter feed, where they actually gave an exact quote. Quote, we're looking at American history. Quote, can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power? The Rev Al on Morning Joe. MSNBC proud of that statement.
Okay, this is so stupid that if you just glance at it and you don't see that it came from MSNBC, what it looks like at first glance is that somebody was calling them out for it, and this is narcissism with steroids is commenting on the comment.
Right. Exactly. But no, you look, that's actually the MSNBC verified Twitter feed. Very, very proud of Reverend Al's take. All right.
I think this is a good demonstration of why you should avoid hanging out with stupid people, because whatever you think of Al Sharpton and his career, I have always considered him extremely intelligent, extremely quick on his feet, really, really great in a debate. He's the only person.
He's a hustler. That's how he got to be a hustler.
Right. He's the only person I ever saw with Colbert in his prime doing his, back when he did his Colbert show shtick, where Colbert tried to tie him up. And he tied up Colbert. He was that sharp. Look, this is your brain on MSNBC. He's sitting there with these morons, and it's rubbed off on him. The Al Sharpton I knew never would have been stupid enough to make that formulation.
Yeah, no, indeed. So let's go to some comedy on the other side. All right, keep things fair and balanced here. So outside the courthouse, there were both protesters and counter-protesters. Obviously, the protesters would be the MAGA guys thinking that the indictment was wrong, and then the counter-protesters were there celebrating the indictment and the charges. And so outside the courthouse in Washington, here is an ultra-extreme MAGA protester. That's not my branding, that's his, telling the media what he thinks of these charges.
So can I ask you a question?
What happens?
I mean, was he right about everything?
No, my question is.
Trump was right about everything.
So, what if he's convicted? Would you still vote for him?
Absolutely. Convicted of what?
Is there any of the 78 charges that he's facing felonies? Would you still vote for him?
If I took a shit right here,
well,
and if I cut it up into 78 pieces, what would I have? I'd have the same stupid piece of shit. It's a
felonies. Would you still vote for him?
If I took a shit right here,
Well,
and if I cut it up into 78 pieces, what would I have? I'd have the same stupid piece of shit. It's irrelevant.
It doesn't matter.
Cut up into 78 different pieces.
What if you personally witnessed him commit a crime and then he was convicted? Would you then vote for him?
Like if he had Don Jr. working for a natural gas company,
No, I'm
making
asking you,
$80,000
is there
a month,
any,
and then started
is
a
there
war in Ukraine?
under any circumstance would you not vote for him, I guess is the
No,
question.
absolutely not. Because he's a proven track record. He's a perfect president. He's an American hero, and he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to the American political system.
I tell you, Meatball Ron's going to have a hell of a time winning that vote. That guy's not budging.
Well, he won't win that guy. Like that guy's not winnable. My premise is most of them are not that guy. It looks like most of them are that guy because of the poll numbers right now, but I've seen that change too many times. And some people point out, validly, that nobody's ever had the lead that Trump has and not become the nominee in the primaries. There's never been anything like Trump. You've never had somebody with that kind of lead with his kind of negatives. You've never had somebody with that kind of lead who's likely to be facing like 305 indictments by the time people vote. All of this is unprecedented.
So let's go to Trump himself now. Third of 4 videos we're going to play. This is Trump leaving D.C. for his Bedminster Club in New Jersey, giving his commentary on the indictment.
Very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024 election?
All right, so then he gets on the plane and he goes to Bedminster. And when he got to his club, he realized there was a wedding booked at the club that day. So he decided to crash it. So here he is a couple hours later. He's gonna meet the bride.
USA!
Bride.
USA! 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 USA!
There he is, happy as could be, man.
I saw that film Braveheart, and they had this thing prima nocta at the weddings. Have you heard of it? Because your bride is looking very good there in that dress.
She obviously thinks I'm a very handsome man. Yeah.
Maybe we could arrange something.
So that was the day yesterday in Trump world on MSNBC, in D.C., in the courthouse, on the tarmac, and then back in Jersey. So this is now, I guess, the 4th indictment, or is it the 3rd, and then the 4th one is coming, or is this the 4th? I think this is the 4th, right? What do you got? Documents.
This is the 4th. Yeah.
Stormy Daniels. This one, and then what's the 4th one? Is there a 4th one yet, or is there a 4th one
the Trump Organization tax?
Well, no, that's not him though. I think there's a 4th one coming. I think this is the 4th.
Georgia.
Right, that one.
They're expecting another indictment.
Okay, so this is
come from Georgia.
The 3rd official, but the 4th likely. Yeah. So, look, they're definitely throwing up as many hurdles as they can. The question is, I mean, it's going to be a hell of a year. It's going to be a hell of a year. I mean, especially now since that trial date for the documents case is pushed back to May, which means you're going to have this cloud hanging over the primaries. And then if he starts winning the primaries and then they try to throw him in jail for the general election, Man, you are talking about just an incredible year of politics that's about to unfold. I mean, the drama of this is just going to be unlike anything we've ever seen.
Well, that great font of wisdom, Roseanne Barr, she went on Tim Pool, and she believes we're going to collapse into a civil war this year. And while I am not one to credit Roseanne with her Cassandra-like powers of prediction, she could be right. What happens if they nominate Trump and he's being indicted and he demands that people fight for him against an illegitimate government? What happens?
Well, because this is now being sort of woven into the fabric of the campaign. Like I said, I think one of the problems that DeSantis is having is that the issues that he's strongest on, which is the culture stuff and the woke stuff, are taking a back seat to this bigger fight regarding the weaponization of the federal government. And that not only, I mean, this is an example of that to an extent, but it goes far, far beyond that. I mean, the biggest thing I could think of, and part of this has to do with because we're in this space, but censorship. Vivek talked about censorship in January 6th as being linked.
Yeah.
I think he was stretching a little bit to try and not get on Trump's bad side, but he wasn't stretching all the way. I could see there's something there. We did a whole piece on the Facebook files in our patron-only show earlier this week. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Twitter files we've seen. I can't wait to see the ShmooTube files. You know what I mean? I can't wait to see all this stuff. But censorship is a huge part of it. The idea that the government does not want us knowing certain things. They don't want us talking about certain things. The old moniker, because I was thinking about this because we put the Facebook files stuff on our Rumble stream, on our patron exclusive stream, because a lot of it has to do with the virus and things like that and the pandemic. And I was thinking to myself, part of why we don't learn as much as we should about that is because we're not allowed to talk about it.
Right.
And when you think of the old cliche, the old, saying, knowledge is power, I very much believe knowledge is power. But the reason knowledge is power is because when you gain knowledge, you share it. The power of knowledge comes in sharing it with other people. And so if the state partners with these giant corporate tech oligarchs to suppress the dissemination of information, well, that takes all the power of knowledge away, because what good is knowledge if you can't spread it to other people? And that in its own way is definitely a war on us. Like that is part of the weaponization of the state against the people, is making sure that we cannot share our ideas with each other. This was something, if we had more time, I was going to bring up to Thomas Frank, because I haven't heard him talk about censorship in that way before, but nothing is more anti-populist than censorship, because censorship prevents populist movements, right? It drowns populist movements in the bathtub because they can never gain momentum because people can't share information. And ideas. They can't build movements around ideas if those ideas are being censored. So that's a part of it. I think the sentencing of the January 6th protesters is a part of that, but obviously my teeth were cut on that issue during the Newburgh 4 case, and we covered the Newburgh 4 this week. You talk about the FBI sending informants into poor black neighborhoods, infiltrating mosques to pick people out of thin air to frame as terrorists and entrap them. I mean, this is the weaponization of the state against the people, and that thematically is really front and center heading into the campaign, where the leading presidential candidate on the Republican side, and according to about half the polls, the leading presidential candidate overall, is being explicitly targeted time after time after time. So yeah, that does create a certain powder keg, does it not?
Well, and particularly in the way you really couldn't have imagined this until it happened. The censors have always invoked moral authority as a way to justify their censorship, right? It's not that we're suppressing the truth, it's that we're suppressing wrongthink, right? This is morally perverse, whether it's communism, whether it's erotic literature, whatever it is. It's perverse. It's something that, why would you want this anyway? We're stamping out evil. Now that the establishment is liberal, it's this bizarre situation where the people invoking the right to censorship are connecting it to a kind of wrongthink that is connected to having any kind of conservative values, even when conservatism really has nothing to do with it. So to portray someone like Matt Taibbi as right wing, right? You're instantly right wing, which means by definition you lack virtue, right? They've made that lacking virtue. Oh, you have some skepticism about the jab. Well, you're a right winger. You're by definition, even though that kind of skepticism about pharmaceuticals has typically come from the left historically, right? But they branded it as right wing.
Exactly. And so we'll see how it goes. But like I said, it's shaping up to be quite the show. We are in store for quite the show. Franklin Worsham, thank you for the $10. Any study can be shaped by those that create them, meaning that knowing anything about medicine is probably no longer possible. More reasonable to assume medicine is universally lying safer. I don't think that's necessarily a safe assumption. I think skepticism is always good. I don't think you should ever, I've said this from day one, not just since the pandemic, but always. You should never believe something just because you heard it on CNN. You should also never disbelieve something just because you heard it on CNN. You have to evaluate these things individually because that's the only way to come to, an impartial verdict. If you go in with an assumption right away that something is true or untrue, that's going to affect your final judgment. I think you have to resist the temptation to be knee-jerk. And it's a strong temptation. I understand the temptation, but you always have to resist it because once you fall into that trap, then at that point you're essentially fighting a culture war, right? Because if your first opinions on things are informed by a general trust or distrust, then you're going off of I won't say a completely emotional, but I'm not saying there's no rational basis to it, but what you're doing is you are conflating two things. You are conflating an attitude towards a certain thing with an objective evaluation of what is coming out of that thing's mouth or on the pages of that thing's paper, right? If that makes sense.
Well, I think what's happened now is we did have a window, and it hasn't been typical in history. We did have a window where I think, in general, people working in fields of science, to the best of their ability, tried to apply scientific method in order to present an objective truth. And certainly we can look back and say that even the best of them had unconscious biases in the kinds of questions they might ask and the kinds of conclusions they might come to with certain kinds of data. And you could say the same thing about the press. But the difference is there was a kind of platonic ideal of just the facts in both fields. What's happened now is because of that, because I think they succeeded at that during this period, about 100 years, more than not journalism shorter than that, but science longer than that. They really established credibility with the public. They earned the public trust. They earned the public belief that these people, when they tell you something, honestly believe it, and it's honestly the result of trial and error scientific experimentation. What happened is people with ideological biases and activists saw the credibility that science had, and they went to the people who fund science. They went to the grant organizations. They went to the boards of directors of not-for-profits, and they took them over and enforced an ideology that now, if you want to work in science, you need to conform ideologically or you won't get your funding. You won't get your tenure. They went to the people who hire these people, and they took over at that level. And now it's discredited science. That's why nobody has any authority anymore.
Right. Indeed. I agree with that. Spade 2187. Thanks for the $4.99. At this point, I'm sitting this election out, not wasting my time on RFK, Dr. West, or Marianne. Maybe it was an autocorrect, but yes, Miriam Williamson. Thank you for the $4.99. Appreciate that. In my apartment building. What was that?
I think
reference.
she was talking about the MMT.
Oh, okay. Got it. Indeed. All right. Okay. Underhill, thank you. Underhill for the $2. RFK is a fart with a side of fries. The audience is turning on RFK. I'm proud of you guys. I don't know if it's that a lot of the RFK stands left or a lot of them came to their senses. A lot of you guys did come to your senses, though, because I remember reading a lot of you guys talking him up who are now off of that train, which is good.
Good.
Chris Mounts, thank you for $5. Russell to love muscle. FYI, Wisconsin has taken more. Okay, I don't know what maybe I'm an idiot.
Hmong, Rohingya, and Afghan refugees.
I know Afghan, but I don't know what
than
the
any
other
other state in the union. Within the cities. That's why I specifically was referencing farm country, because I've been to most states and I've been up in the rural parts of Wisconsin. I mean, to keep it simple, I should have just said Maine.
Should have just said Maine. Always go with Vermont.
Always go with Vermont or Maine. We're just talking about white. That's it. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Dave Delarai, thanks for the $8. I saw an article headline recently. Trump could run for president from jail. It's happened before. Didn't read it, but it could have referenced Debs. Yeah, we'll try and find some more stuff related to that.
Or
for
friend
Sunday.
of show, Lyndon LaRouche.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Friend of the show, Lyndon LaRouche.
From beyond the grave.
Indeed. All righty, folks. We have a couple more super chats that we will get to in just a moment. We have a hard out at 11:30 and 2 more segments to do. So let's get right into this. Lizzo is being sued. What's going on with Lizzo?
You snuck up on me with that. All right. So, Lizzo has surprised a lot of people by accusations that recently came out from some of her dancers. They have filed a lawsuit against her for sexual and racial harassment. So let's take a look at this. 3 of Lizzo's former dancers filed a lawsuit Tuesday morning in Los Angeles Superior Court against the performer, her production company, and Shirlene Quigley, Lizzo's dance team captain. Ariana Davis, Crystal Williams, and Noel Rodriguez alleged that the defendants created a hostile work environment through sexual, religious, and racial harassment, along with 2 separate lewd incidents involving a banana. When does a lewd incident not start and end with a banana? That's my question.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
There's always a banana.
Redundant writing there.
That's why I'm trying to ban that as a fruit.
Yeah.
The stunning.
Don't they have editors over at Jezebel?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
I think at Jezebel
they get paid by the word over there.
Well, they just run on white hot rage against the patriarchy at Jezebel. The stunning nature of how Lizzo and her management team treated their performers seems to go against everything Lizzo stands for publicly, while privately she weight shames her dancers and demeans them in ways that are not only illegal, but absolutely demoralizing, the plaintiff's lawyer said in a statement. So at this time, Lizzo hadn't responded. Now Lizzo has responded. I mean, it's boilerplate denial. I have high standards. I'm not the villain. But too many people have come out in support of these accusations who are not parties to the lawsuit for that to really be credible, but we'll get into that. So getting into some of the details, they describe Lizzo questioning Davis's commitment to her position because of weight gain. Oh, the irony. As well as pressuring the dancers to interact with nude performers in Amsterdam's red light district against their will. Lizzo hounded her employees to catch dildos ejected from performers' vaginas. Lizzo cheered loudly to motivate employees to eat bananas protruding from performers' vaginas. In related banana harassment, I'm sorry. That's like you need the anchor on The Simpsons to read that.
Yeah, right.
In related banana harassment, the suit says Quigley, who allegedly regularly discussed her own sex life and inappropriately interrogated the dancers over their own,
had a party trick in which she would perform oral sex on a banana in front of the dancers. So apparently they wound up on the dance crew through a reality show competition called Watch Out for the Big Girls. In April 2023, Williams contested Lizzo's allegation that the dancers were drinking before performances, which led to a tense back and forth between the two women. 5 days later, she was let go because of, quote, budget cuts. So she also got them angry because she had to do a remote meeting because she was sick. She made an audio recording. The third plaintiff says she quit in response to the poor treatment of her teammates, as well as intense religious proselytizing from Quigley. Quigley allegedly made it her mission to preach Christianity to Rodriguez, and when Rodriguez brought this up to management at the production company, nothing was done. When Rodriguez also spoke up about the firings of Davis and Williams, she claimed she was told, "We've never had any problems with you." The suit says that Ms. Rodriguez, one of the few members of the dance cast who is not Black, was not painted with the same generalized and unfounded criticisms as the Black members of the dance cast. So here's one of the people who backed this up, former dancer. After news of the lawsuit broke, other people who have worked with Lizzo corroborated the plaintiff's claims. "I'm not part of the lawsuit, but this was very much my experience in my time there. I very much applaud the dancer's courage to bring this to light," former Lizzo backup dancer Courtney Hollenquist wrote on her Instagram story. Lizzo's former creative director, Quinn Whitney Wilson, shared the news story to her Instagram and added, "I haven't been a part of that world for about 3 years for a reason. I very much applaud the dancer's courage to bring this to light, and I grieve parts of my own experience." And also a woman, I'll share this with you, a woman who was making a documentary for Lizzo. This is filmmaker Sophia Nahil Allison. She quit making the documentary in 2 weeks because of her experience there. And she says in her Instagram post, "I usually do not comment on anything pop culture related, but in 2019, I traveled a bit with Lizzo to be the director of her documentary. I walked away after about 2 weeks. I was treated with such disrespect by her. I witnessed how arrogant, self-centered, and unkind she is. I was not protected and was thrown into a shitty situation with little support. My spirit said to run as fast as you fucking can, and I'm so grateful I trusted my gut. I felt gaslit and was deeply hurt, but I've healed. Reading these reports made me realize how dangerous of a situation it was. This kind of abuse of power happens far too often. Much love and support to the dancers." So, I don't know, for the lawyers, these are all allegations at the time, and Lizzo has a right to her moment in court. Given how competitive this industry is and how easy it is to be blacklisted from it, the fact that so many people who have no incentive to come out and back up these stories are coming out indicates to me that this is not a frivolous lawsuit, that, in my opinion, these allegations are in all likelihood true.
Probably, yes. This is like when we all found out that DeGeneres was mean to her staff. It's Ellen. Ellen's nice, right? She's nice on the show. That's the whole point of the show, is that Ellen is nice, right? She gives people money. She, reaches out to the audience.
She rehabilitates George Bush.
Right, exactly. You're right. She's even nice to George Bush. And then we find out, oh, she's not nice. Nice is a brand. When you're a public figure, whatever you put out in public is a brand, right? People get the sense that when, Matt Damon is acting in a movie, that's when he's pretending. That's when he's putting on a show. But then when he goes on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon for an interview about the movie, that's Matt Damon being himself. No, he's still putting on a show. It's just a different version of the show. I'm not saying he's an asshole, right? Matt Damon seems like a nice enough guy. I'm just using him as an example. Whenever a public figure has a camera and lights on them, they are putting on a show of sorts. That's why when you meet a public figure in real life, when you run into them in real life, they usually seem kind of miserable. And it's not that they're miserable, it's that they're not on. They're not beaming with enthusiasm to be where they are because they're just going about their day. So for Lizzo, it seems like body positivity was more her brand than a reflection of her true self. Just like when it came out that Ellen was a total bitch, that's probably who she is in real life. And the nice, benevolent person was the public persona, right? When these people go on interviews for these talk shows, they are not even wearing their clothes most of the time. They have publicists who pick wardrobe for them to wear. It's wardrobe, it's costume, it's all presentation. And so you never want to put anybody up on a pedestal, a public figure, as an exemplar of humanity without knowing much about who they are when the cameras are off, right? Sean Penn, crazy bastard that he is now, I mean, his politics have completely jumped the shark. When he was down in Haiti, he spent a lot of time in Haiti with no cameras on him at all. He went to New Orleans to pull people out of the streets that had become rivers. He didn't make a public thing about that at all. Paparazzi photographed him in the rowboats with a shotgun saving people, right? So that's a person who walks the walk. And again, he has completely become just a Zelensky simp and just a complete maniac on a whole sorts of issues now. But that's a guy you can say, okay, we know a little bit about... Right, exactly. That's a guy who you can say, okay, we know a little bit about who he is as a person because of what he's done when the cameras are off him. When you got people putting on some show, whether their brand is generosity, body positivity, anti-racism, you don't know a person until you know what they do when no one's watching. And that's the lesson to be learned here, I think.
Well, this is why before we do the show, we take off our yarmulkes.
Yeah,
we take off the high. We only donate to Zionist causes anonymously.
Right.
We don't do that in front of you.
Right. That's not.
You'd
that's
be very
brand.
surprised to see us walking around with
right.
penis,
Exactly.
You don't know.
Right.
We actually, it's like we have to shave it because you can't cover it up, but we put on the beard.
Maybe Russell's Menachem wardrobe is not wardrobe. Maybe that's
it's not.
Maybe this is wardrobe.
Well, it's like Superman and Clark Kent, right? Yeah,
right.
I mean, that's the real me, is the Hasid. All right, so to make Keaton worry about getting the show thrown off the air, I'll get a little into the intersectional implications here. So one of the reasons that I'll often attack a lot of these ideas is, a bone deep, some might say cynicism, I would say shrewdness about human nature. When you throw out ideas like intersectionality, as it's often applied, and I don't say there's nothing to that idea as a social analysis, but when you look at how it plays in the wild, when you look how it plays in society, when you throw out this idea that the more intersectional identities you have that put you into an oppressed class, the more virtuous you are, you've basically handed a tool to psychopaths to cover up their behavior. Humans are humans. There is no such thing as a class of human or an identity category that is less prone to exploitation of their fellow human beings than another. So the idea that a full-figured African-American woman would by definition not abuse other people of that category or not behave in an oppressive manner herself in spite of having every opportunity to do so, it doesn't mean that person is more likely, but that's not the bias. The bias is that they're less likely. And whenever you throw out standards like that, not only do you blind yourself to a rational analysis of human behavior, you've really given a great cover to people who are horrible to cover up their abuse. Why do you have, it's a cliche of religion, the person who is fanatically religious in public, who is horrible and abusive and just completely, sexually having sexual abuse and assault in their background, because it's a cover. It's a cover, right? Whenever you create these kinds of irrational beliefs, they have the character of religious beliefs. And people who are looking for a way to abuse people without consequence are naturally attracted to those ideas
and will wrap themselves up in that blanket so that you don't look at what they're really doing. That's how I read this story.
Indeed. You know, it's really a shame because I was a little hesitant to cover this story because I feel like in order to really cover this story well, we would need Norm Finkelstein here to give his take on it.
Finkelstein would hit the nail right on the head with this story.
I think Finkelstein, that would.
I mean, that's like just saying, you know, we put a lot of work into this channel, but fuck it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
Let's go out in a blaze of glory.
Jesse says, we know you would treat your minions well, Ellen. That's why, if you notice, I lead with DeGeneres when I'm talking about Ellen DeGeneres, because people have gotten that confused before. When Russell says Ellen loves George Bush, people think they're talking about our Ellen, our friend Ellen. So I always say, I say DeGeneres now to set up who I'm talking about.
I just assume
I'm very conscious of that.
Everybody knows that about Ellen.
Right. Exactly. Folks, we got one more story to cover, so get your super chats in now. Last call. Nicole Vance, thanks for the $10 for all the trolls here. We're mainly independent, not for the two-party system. Go find another area to voice your party. In other words, FO. Are there trolls in the chat? I think the chat seems pretty well behaved, but were you getting some duopoly folks in there? You know to tell them where to go, Nicole. Thank you. Franklin, thanks for the $5. Appreciate that, but need to respond. Okay, I think self-preservation is the opposite of culture war because it's only about the self. Sure, I'm just saying don't make assumptions based on other assumptions, right? Evaluate each case. It's fine to go in with a certain skepticism. I think skepticism is healthy and necessary. Obviously, the show's fucking called Due Dissidence, right? We wouldn't call it that if we didn't feel that way. I'm just saying it's also
we're trying
important
to cover up who we really are.
Right, exactly. It's also important to, evaluate things case by case. All right. Bippin in the private chat here says, India is a case study in support of one of your points and one in opposition. Number one, India has multi-party democracy. In truth, the ruling class controls multiple parties instead of two, right? That's true. Not much functionally different from the system here. That's correct. I take your point. That's a good point. In multiple states, some party or another kept the population ignorant, impoverished, and mired in caste politics to hold on to power. No, that's true. I mean, and that's why I think it's important what the third party is. That's why I think it's important to define a new movement on terms that we feel comfortable with, because you have organizations like Forward Party, you have organizations like No Labels, which represent, in one sense, a threat to the duopoly, but ultimately that threat is quite superficial if they are easily captured by the same forces that have captured these two parties. Then you run into the same dynamic that you're talking about there. So thank you very much for that.
It's true, but a multi-party system does give the opportunity to voice more of a variety of political platforms, obviously, than the two-party system. I mean, AOC, before she went full DNC zombie, she said her and Biden don't belong in the same party. Now they do, but at the time, there was some truth to that. Yeah, like why should people on the left be forced into a party with I wouldn't even call it center-right at this point. I mean, the Democrats are kind of like right at this point. Why should people on the left be forced to vote for that?
Right. No, indeed. Bonzo Beans over on Rumble asks, what have I missed? Well, you can rewind it over on Rumble, sir, but thanks for going in. Greetings from Switzerland. Didn't know you were from Switzerland, Bonzo Beans. Thank you very much. And you also had an addition.
What did you do with my family's gold?
Right, yeah, exactly. You had an addition to Russell's comments on intersectionality and abuse. Not only a cover for abuse of individual, but a fantastic tool for mass control. Thank you, Bonzo Beans. Yeah. And who says it's, we have somebody in our private chat here. Sparkle Motion says it's 1648 here in the Netherlands. Can I call in for a question? Yes, we will admit you after this last segment. We got to get this last segment out of the way because we do have a hard out at 11:30. So, but we will admit you after this last segment. If you want a question, we'd be happy to field that in just a few minutes. So hang around if that's cool, Sparkle Motion. But thank you very much for calling in. All right, one more segment to do. Then we got a couple super chats and a caller on the line. This week, Hunter Biden's business associate, Devon Archer, testified behind closed doors to the House Oversight Committee. They just released the transcript of that interview, and here is a write-up. This is from CBS about the findings. The GOP-led House Oversight and Accountability Committee released a 141-page transcript of its interview earlier this week with Devon Archer, a former business partner of Hunter Biden, who testified about his business dealings with President Biden's son. Archer testified that Hunter Biden was selling the brand, and it was the elder Biden who brought the most value to the brand, according to the transcript. Archer told the committee staff and lawmakers, quote, "I think Burisma would have gone out of business if it didn't have the brand attached to it." Then Representative Dan Goldman, Democrat of New York, who was elected this last midterm cycle, asked Archer if he had any knowledge that Joe Biden had any direct involvement with Burisma, and Archer replied, no. Of course, the whole point of that first statement is that he didn't need direct knowledge of anything at Burisma. He provided the brand, and according to Archer, the brand is what kept the company a company.
Right.
In response to questions from Congressman Goldman about the brand's alleged impact, Archer said that it appeared to shield Burisma because people would be intimidated to mess with them. It was an energy holdings company, right? And if you have connects with the executive of the United States, then that makes you a lot more bulletproof in your industry than you would be without that, obviously. In a separate line of questioning by Republican Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, Archer was asked whether the brand was about Dr. Jill Biden, a great doctor, a fantastic doctor.
Oh,
Jill
she's
Biden.
a wonderful
She's a wonderful
doctor.
doctor. She should be the Surgeon General. Said she's just First Lady. Or anyone else. You're talking about Joe Biden. Is that fair to say? Yeah, that's fair to say. So the brand was Joe Biden. He lays that out very explicitly. Again, this is taken from a transcript of a closed-door hearing. Archer, according to the transcript, also testified that the elder Biden was put on speakerphone with business contacts, potential business associates, including foreign national, maybe 20 times during the course of Archer's and Hunter's business relationship. Joe Biden was put on the phone to sell the brand, Archer said. So whether you're talking specifics is not the point, as we're going to find out later in a video that we'll show you. Part of what was delivered is the brand, he said. I mean, it's like anything, if you're Jamie Dimon's son or any CEO, I think that's what we're talking about, is that there was a brand being delivered along with other capabilities and reach. Yes, asked what the Bidens talked about when Joe Biden was on speakerphone, Archer responded, say, where are you? How's the weather? How's the fishing? How's the whatever? But, it was very casual conversations. Of course, what he's also testifying is that the nature of the conversations is not of paramount importance. What's of paramount importance is that you have a close line of communication to the executive, right? That's why, the mob doesn't really talk business when they're out at the restaurant with the cigars and the wine. They're not talking about who's next on the hit list when they're out in public, right? But those are the meetings. It's a powwow, right?
Right.
Asked what the Bidens talk about when Joe Biden was on speakerphone, Archer responded, say, how's the weather, whatever. Oh, sorry, I did that same thing. Archer was also asked if then Vice President Biden regularly checked in on his son, who's admitted he'd had issues with drugs. Every day, Archer replied, but asked whether he had ever heard them discuss the substance of Hunter's business, he responded, no. Now, while the speakerphone calls were described as casual conversations, Archer, also testified he believed that there may be more involved. I think the calls were, that's what it was. They were calls to talk about the weather, and that was signal enough to be powerful. Exactly. After Archer was interviewed Monday, before the transcript was available for independent review, Goldman said Archer testified Hunter was selling the illusion of access to his father, which is a lie. He was not selling the illusion of access to his father. He was selling the brand, which is access to his father, right? So Dan Goldman, just a little snake, obviously.
On the face of it, what does Joe Biden think is going on when he's on speakerphone at his crackhead son's business meeting? That he's just on there to talk about the weather? It's like the mob. You look at mob conversations. Hey, what's going on over there? All right, yeah. They're not gonna. Joe Biden in a mixed company of foreign nationals is not going to be like, you motherfuckers better pay. What did you think he's going to do? All he has to do is be like, hey, yes, I'm here. I'm Joe Biden. What's up? Bye.
Right, bye. Right, exactly. Hope the weather's nice.
That's it. That's all he has to do. What, the fucking Carlo Gambino has to make an explicit threat?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Hey, how are you, boys? I hope everything's working out over there.
Right.
See you later. Right? He doesn't
Mission
have to say
accomplished.
anything else. What was he saying, Goodfellas? Paulie didn't move fast because he didn't have to move for anybody.
Right. Exactly. So in addition to testifying before Congress, Archer also sat down with Tucker Carlson for his new Twitter show, in which Tucker produced a letter that Joe Biden had written to him. Part 2 of this interview, which is about an hour long, dropped, I think, 20 minutes before we went on the air this morning. So maybe we'll have more on this on Sunday. We'll watch it and we'll see if it's worth following up on. But this part's pretty good right here. Here's Tucker producing that letter.
How many times do you think you met Joe Biden during the course of your relationship with Hunter?
How many times? I should have this off the top of my head since I've been asked so many times. Probably same thing, 20.
So I got one last question for you.
I testified under oath. That's a good answer to go with.
Entire story, but we found this letter.
If you said it under oath, you should probably go with that again.
Stick with it. Yeah.
Stick with it. Yeah, exactly. Don't go changing it the day after. Good call.
January 20th, 2011, which I think puts you in your late 30s, mid to late 30s. Right. Okay, so you're a younger man. This is from the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, to you personally, and it's personalized here at the bottom. Devon Archer, Rosemont Seneca Partners, that was your partnership with Hunter Biden in Georgetown. Dear Devon, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu Jintao, who was running China at that point. I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Thanks for coming. Sincerely, Joseph R. Biden Jr. P.S. Handwritten, happy you guys are together. So there are many levels here. But here's the vice president.
P.S. You get the fucking money yet? P.S. Where's the fucking money?
Listen, it's your job to make sure my idiot son doesn't put that fucking money up his nose. You understand?
Right, exactly.
You take the leather duffel bag. Don't let him get a hold of it.
Right.
The United States saying to you, a man in his mid-30s, who's not a government official, I'm sorry I was occupied with the guy who runs the world's largest country. I would much rather talk to you and thank you. What was he thanking you for?
Well, first of all, it's a lovely letter, and it was...
It's quite enthusiastic. It's
a little weird. This guy's a little fucking weird, this Archer guy, because it's a very friendly conversation that they have. Like, it's not contentious. Like, Tucker's kind of grilling him, but he's doing a good job because you get the sense that they kind of like each other, despite the fact that they're kind of adversaries, right, in this interview. It doesn't really play that way. It's kind of a weird vibe, right? Because he doesn't seem all that defensive. Like, Archer seems really happy to be there. He obviously is, or he wouldn't have come on.
You know, at the rate Tucker's going, they're going to find him with his head stuffed up his ass, and they're going to rule it a suicide.
Exactly.
Though, right?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter. I think at the end of the day for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world, and I think he was excited about the prospects for Hunter, and he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
Nice gesture, indeed. Well, look, I mean, the thing about it is, like, the overall take on this case has not really changed because it was just obvious from the outset that Hunter Biden wouldn't have been within 1,000 miles of that energy board if his father were not the vice president. So that's influence peddling right there. And the fact that they never explicitly talked about anything makes this case difficult to prosecute, and it makes it probably difficult to impeach under normal circumstances. But these are not normal circumstances.
It's exactly like the mob. That's how. Because what are you going to get? What are you going to get on the recording?
Right. What are you going to get? Right. Exactly. But the fact is, these aren't normal circumstances. Number one, the Democrats set a precedent by going after Trump for that phone call with Zelensky, the perfect call, which that shouldn't have been impeachable. And then it's further complicated by the fact that this is an energy board of Ukraine, a country that now Biden is looting the treasury and sending it out the door to Ukraine to agitate for World War III. So that adds another layer of complication. So, like, under normal circumstances, I don't think it would be very easy to make a case for impeachment based on what you have. What you have is basically standard issue corruption that most presidents get away with on a daily basis. What makes these extenuating circumstances are A, the precedent that's been set in recent years, and B, World War III, where the government that is the beneficiary of billions of dollars that are being sent out the door for World War III happens to be the country where the president's son sat on an energy board and apparently funneled money to his father through his share of the take, i.e. 10% for the big guy, i.e. $83,000 a month, a salary that was cut in half after Joe Biden was no longer VP, right? I mean, there's just so much evidence to say that, the Biden family in general was using Hunter as the front man to profit off of his dealings in Ukraine. And Ukraine is very central to world affairs right now. So under these circumstances, it probably is impeachable.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to do it. They're
I'm
getting
not,
ready to do it.
I know we're very big in Ireland. So, our Irish friends, I am not besmirching your wonderful race. But in America, when the Irish came over after the potato famine in a lot of major cities, they wound up getting involved in politics, partly because not only were they so numerous, the other immigrant groups in places where you had a large number of immigrants like New York or Chicago or Philadelphia, they got behind Irish politicians because they were the only ones who arrived already speaking English. So they got behind them to represent all of their interests. And you wound up with this famous machine-style politics in a lot of these cities that was largely dominated by the Irish. Before you had a stereotype of a Jewish lawyer, the stereotype was an Irish lawyer, because a lot of them would get their law degrees and then go into politics. The Biden family is a throwback to that. There's a throwback to old urban machine politics style family corruption. It's a throwback to a time when this would have been de rigueur in Chicago politics circa 1940, right? In a lot of ways, Joe Biden's governing style, such as it is a throwback to that kind of offhand corruption. The thing is, you got a guy now who was the vice president and the president at this point, applying this Tammany Hall style Ray Donovan kind of method to running the free world.
Right. Exactly. And, the president that Biden served under had at least a head on his shoulders in terms of how far we were willing to go for Ukraine. Obama famously said Ukraine will always mean more to Russia than it means to the U.S., which is why we're not willing to start World War III over it. We're not willing to spill blood over it. And now you have Biden, who was his point man on Ukraine as VP with these dealings, and now he becomes president and he's Rambo on Ukraine, right? What is that?
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
It's a little excerpt from one of those phone calls.
Yeah, exactly. So that puts a button on that segment. It is 11:05. We got an out in about 20 minutes, but we have time for a couple callers who are on the line from overseas, a couple Euro dissidents. So Sparkle Motion, you're up first. Please turn your microphone on if you are there. You're from Switzerland. Is that correct? You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? It's great to meet you.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Okay. So, wow. I'm really great. I'm really happy to be here. I became a stan very quickly, to be honest.
You became a stan very quickly?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Switzerland.
Rotterdam.
Switzerland.
No, the Netherlands. I'm from
the Netherlands. I'm sorry.
Ah,
Switzerland was Bonzo Beans over in the Rumble chat. I'm sorry. I mixed that up.
I'm from Rotterdam.
Nice. Okay.
Where it has been raining nonstop, just like in Great Britain. So.
Okay. Well, it must be a relief from the heat. Y'all had a crazy heat wave there, right?
Yes, that was in June, and then in July it started to rain and it didn't stop. I'm just saying that because in the south of Europe it's Yes, they have terrible heat and forest fires, and so we have different weather here.
Well, what's your question? You said you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
First question, since you have an international audience, wouldn't it be an idea to talk about other subjects than what's going on in the U.S. and what's going on in the rest of the world?
It would be
nice.
Great. The only problem with that is we're actually stupid, and we don't really know.
Absolutely not stupid.
We're
No,
stupid Americans.
I'm kidding. We actually have talked about doing some more international stories, specifically on the Friday morning show when we have more of an international audience listening. So yes, I take that point.
No, I wouldn't become a patron if you are stupid.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
We would like to do that, actually. Yes.
Yeah, and next question is: could you please look into the case of the Chicago principal Abdul Muhammad? I think it's very worrying, not only for what's happening in the U.S., but the professional managerial class and what they're doing to keep people down. The Netherlands, for sure, I have experienced that. Basically, copy paste whatever the U.S. does, they bring it here. They implement policies that from the U.S. that are actually not even a matter here in the Netherlands. For example, we don't have food deserts, yet they all the consequences of and health issues and what people have in the U.S. because of food deserts, they implement them here, and so it's not, as we say in Dutch, far from my bed show what's going on in the U.S. It's of course I care about people and injustice, but this also directly affects us. I am so happy to know that it has a name, professional managerial class.
Yes.
Oh yes, it does.
Yeah, we've kind of coined that. Not we do dissidents, but this online left space has sort of coined that term, made it popular recently.
Yes, and I also know the woman who wrote the book is basically takes one to know one.
Right. Well, yes, thank you. And you're on Patreon.
I just quickly looked up that story, so yeah, we should cover that. They fired like 7 black principals in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can I say something on the lighter note?
Sure.
Of course.
Well, it is very funny. I'm born in the Netherlands, but my parents are from Morocco. I am a Muslim North African woman, and of all the alternative media, I became a Patreon of 2 Jewish white guys.
There you go. Well, who says we don't have broad appeal, right?
We are the world.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, it was great. Sorry, go ahead.
So it really shows that, like they say, not all kinfolk are kinfolk, and most important is integrity, whether somebody has integrity or not, and the color, whether he looks like you or that doesn't matter. Everybody can betray you.
Yes,
and it's all about integrity. And I like your comedy very much. You're my morning show. I listen to you to wake up in the morning, and I don't know, subconsciously started to rewatch Dr. Katz. And
Dr. Katz was a great show. So you have a Jewish sense of humor. If you like us and you like Dr. Katz,
and he reminds me of you.
That's
So
interesting.
maybe,
You know, I haven't heard of my parents used to watch Dr. Katz when it was on the air and I was a kid, but I haven't revisited it in a while. Now that you say that, I'll have to go watch some old episodes to see what you're
so
talking
now
about.
I'm sorry. I don't have my phone. I left my phone in the kitchen. But see, I don't know your names. But one is Wise, the other one.
Well, our names? Well, I'm Keaton and this is Russell.
Yes,
I'm Weiss.
Russell.
Right, yeah.
Especially Russell reminds me of the patients of Dr. Katz.
Interesting.
You're
And
not far off the mark there.
And it's a compliment. I like it. I like it very much.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. It was great to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much for calling in. We'll help you do it again.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right. Have a great one.
Stay
Bye-bye.
dry.
Yes, indeed. Patrick Donahue, our brother from Ireland, is here. We get to meet you finally, Patrick. You're on the air.
Good to hear from you, lads. Nice to be on.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you are Irish, all right.
It could be faking it.
Well,
It's a lot better than
well.
Tom Cruise did in that Far and Away movie. I'll say that.
And no, I was going to speak in, call in last week after Sinead O'Connor passed away.
Yes,
great admirer of her outlook on life and our politics. I say that I think to yourself and the PM, Keaton. You know, she's well known. She had a lot of bad childhood, had a lot of problems with mental health. She had addiction issues that are kind of well known in Ireland, maybe not known elsewhere. And hopefully not speaking out of turn. My sister was actually in treatment with her there a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
With her?
With Sinead, yeah. She was a bit of a character, a very fiery person, even in rehab. We just had good time for her. She would always speak out what she didn't think was right within the complex, even though it is a great place that has a really high success rate. And one of those successes now is my sister. Thankfully, she's
great.
So it was just something I was just saying to Keaton in the PMs. Something I'd read a book called Chasing the Scream from a fella called Johann Hari. And I was actually coming back from Vegas and the TVs were broke on the plane, so I had to read the book. And I was like, I've been meaning to read it. You know the way there's so much always going on and you never get a chance to sit down. So I had 10 hours on a flight with no TV. So I read this book and I'm so glad I read it because it absolutely, like I've had a few family members that unfortunately went down that road. I'm from a very working class kind of rough area in Dublin. With a lot of drug problems, and unfortunately some of my family members went down that road. And I used to be to them saying, you know, why are you doing this? You know, I would see them as bad people for taking drugs and see them as selfish and everything else. And when I read that book, it gave me a new perspective of why people become addicts. A lot of it is rooted in childhood trauma. A lot of it is, you know, if you don't get parented a certain way, you know, in the house there wasn't a whole pile of hugs and love, and it was very aggressive. You know, with the father and things like that. And when I read that book, I understood that's why so many of my brothers and sisters ended up that way. You know, kids do need love. They do need to be in an environment where, you know, they can feel loved, etc. And when I read that book, it made me understand them. And at the sister that I ended up in treatment with Sinead O'Connor, I ended up going to her house probably the day after the flight, after I got over my jet lag. And just, you know, she was in the depths of addiction, cheeks all sunken in, looking terrible. This is someone who actually is a qualified drugs counselor. She was in she went on to drugs in late teens, became clean, became a drugs counselor, and then a relapsed after a relationship breakup after 20 years.
Wow.
And now she's back as a counselor. Happy to say she actually got promoted there about 2 months ago, which actually brought me to tears because I'm just so happy that she got her life back. But I went straight to her house and said, I understand now and don't worry. And I took her into my home and got her into treatment. About 3 months later, waiting to get into this place, and she's in a lot better. But it changed my perspective. And a lot of the drug war started based on racism. A fella called Harry Anslinger, you know, really to get, you know, because obviously prohibition ended and he didn't have to find something else. So he went on to marijuana and, you know, looked for negative reports. There might be 19 positive reports. There was one negative. He would jump on that. He made out that women would jump on black men if they did cannabis. You know, we can't have our, you know, white women getting with black men.
Yeah.
Well, that's
reefer madness. Yeah. Well, that's we know there was actually I can't remember what his name was, but there was somebody from the Nixon White House who came out and spilled the beans that yes, they very consciously because you know movements like the Black Panthers were scaring the shit out of them. They were looking for a way to incarcerate specifically black people, and that was a big part, the main incentive
for the Nixon administration's war on drugs.
Yeah. Because I think there was a statistic in that book. I can't remember. I think it was something like 18% of drug dealers in the States are African Americans, but 80% of drug convictions are actually Black Americans. But they make up a very small minority of drug dealers. Right. So it's like Black people don't have money for lawyers. You don't have money for bail.
Well, it's also
they don't even have money to go to trial. I mean, most of them are most drug dealers are in because they took a plea.
Yeah.
Well, they don't do drug sweeps in white neighborhoods.
Right.
If you had done a drug sweep in my neighborhood, half the people in the fucking neighborhood would have gone to jail. They just don't do that.
Right. Indeed.
Well, it's a sad way. I thought the lady there was from Switzerland. Unfortunately, she's from the Netherlands, but Portugal gets a lot of good kind of pats on the back for their decriminalization policy. Switzerland actually went one further and actually legalized heroin in the sense that if someone like, say, my sister has an addiction, rather than going out and leaving her to criminals on the streets who contaminate it full of pollutants that ruin your organs and ruin your veins, that they give them diamorphine, which is medically pure heroin, and they can function better on it. A lot of people in Switzerland go get heroin at 7 a.m. in the morning and then go and work because they can function. Whereas someone like an addict in Dublin, I remember one of the kids looking at an addict outside the shops where I live in Clondalkin in Dublin, and he's goofing off and his head's dropping, and he's, like a lot of videos you see in the States and what they'd call ghettos and everything else. And, I remember my kid looking a bit, oh, geez, look at him. I said, no, something happened to him to make him like that, But he's left in the hands of criminals rather than medical professionals for his addiction. And unfortunately, then his organs are going to be destroyed. His veins are going to be destroyed, and he's going to die eventually because the government here would rather prosecute and criminalize his addiction. And Switzerland, their intravenous drug use is down 50%. They deal with the actual cause of it, which is childhood trauma, and then they actually give them as much as they want, just not enough that would actually kill them. They never try and cut their dosage. And it's been a massive success. And I just wanted to say that just on the show. Just after Sinead passed away, it just made me think of it. There has to be a more humane way of dealing with addicts. I don't think it'll ever come in the States. I think it's too regressive of a country. But I think Europe, places like my own, hopefully will start to bring it in. I've approached it. We actually have a minister for drugs here. I've actually approached the minister for drugs. Unfortunately, he told me a lot of lies. It was like the thing you said earlier, Keaton, about a lawyer, like Jimmy Dore and RFK Jr. When you're debating with a lawyer, it's very, very hard to win sometimes because that drugs minister came out with some absolute blatant lies to me about Switzerland. I then had to go back and look to find out that he was lying and saying, no, I was true. I came to him with the truth, and he had to lie to get me away from him, It was actually my sister's graduation from the course to invite the minister for drugs. I used that time to go approach him, and he had to lie to get me away from him. He said, I'm not here for this today. When I start pushing him with statistics of the positives and saying, why can we not follow that? I said, it's your ideology, your right-wing ideology is stopping you from seeing what can actually help people. And it's just kind of said to me, a bit of a cheek to come here to pat addicts on the back when there's other addicts out there getting fed absolute poison because of your ideology won't help them.
Well, thank you so much for the call, my friend. It was great to meet you. Thank you for your support. We hear from you every show. You start us off in our evening shows with a nice bedtime chat. So thank you so much, man. It was great to talk to you, and we hope you call back again soon.
Will do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. All righty.
Yeah, I keep maybe we'll do a segment on this. I'll check it out. YouTube keeps trying to get me to watch this video that's about how Ireland is the richest country that nobody can live in. Like apparently, there's huge money that's coming to Ireland, but it sounds like a gentrification story. I'll take a look at it. Maybe we'll do a segment.
Yeah, we should do an international segment every Friday for the show. That would be a good thing to get.
That's
going.
a good idea.
Mr. Fancy Pants, thanks for the $4.99. Appreciate that. Never understood the appeal of RFK. A, he's a Democrat. B, he's a Kennedy. And C, doesn't have good policies. Yeah, I mean, what I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. I understand people wanting an advocate for the medical dissent. I think there are far better advocates than him. And I think the Ukraine stance is refreshing. So I understand why people are drawn to that. But what did I say months ago, I think? I said, the more you look under the hood with this guy, the less you're going to like what you see. And a lot of the RFK stands said, no, you're crazy, you're wrong. And, well, bring it here. Line to apologize.
I do believe in free heroin in Jenin in Palestine. Right, I think we should give them all free heroin.
Yeah. I said it's not like I understand people's attraction to him, but I told you, lift up the hood, check what's in the car. The more you look, you're not going to like what you see. John Locke, thanks for the $20. I almost broke up with this chick for being a DNC stan, but then realized it's just her sub-E kink. Okay, well, I'm happy for you, John Locke. I'm glad you found love. Glad you found love.
That is some geeky role play right there.
Indeed. Oh, it's starting to storm here. Wow. Thank you for the $20, my friend. That's very generous. And thank you, Raw Nickel, for the $5. I'd like to contact the HR department about some banana harassment in the chat. Is that right? Is that right? Are you guys acting up? It's too early for that. It's morning. This is the morning show.
I haven't seen any of that.
I haven't seen any of that either. But, folks, thank you very much for a great show. We do have to wrap now, but we want to once again make clear, no show Sunday. Sunday, we will be in the city filming the Humanity for Peace rally for our documentary. Just to be clear, some people were a little confused about this on Twitter. There will be a live stream of that rally. That will not be our live stream, though. We're going to be filming for the documentary. There will be live streams of it on YouTube. I will post links to that on our Twitter tomorrow and obviously Sunday when it's happening. So if you want to tune in live, please tune in live to that rally. If you can go, even better. If you're in the New York City area, Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, 47th and 2nd, overlooking the United Nations on Sunday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Come say hello. Russell and I will be there. Jose will be there. They got a great speaker lineup there. And so we're really looking forward to that. But because of that, no show Sunday. There will be a show 8 p.m. Monday night, August 7th. That is the next time we will see you guys. So thank you very much for being here this morning. No show Sunday. Until Monday, please do, of course, be safe and be well.
Oh, shit.
Almost forgot.
Courage.
Please clap.